Hi, it's Peter Chapman from SKUFood, and welcome back to another one of our recipes for success in this series where we're really trying to help food producers and processors who are operating in a new environment. And this is our way to try to give back and share some insights to help you in this really challenging new environment. And as I was getting ready to do my newsletter last week and put together the material for our recipe for success today, I really started to think about the language I was using and how I was describing some of the things we need to do. And when talk, I talk about generating sales, and I think 6 or 8 weeks ago, if you and I had had this conversation, we would have talked about generating sales. But now we have to just appreciate that we are operating in a new environment, and so we have to respect that. And so I was giving it some thought, and I think I probably shouldn't be saying generating sales, because I think that we have to be sensitive to the fact that there are a lot of things going on right now, and we have to first of all appreciate people in the food industry from one end of this value chain to the other. We have people, especially in Canada now, who are going out to start to plant. We have people who work in agriculture all year long, whether it's dairy or beef. And then also the people who work in processing plants and the logistics supply chain to get product into warehouses and then finally into stores. So many different people have to be still coming to work and keeping themselves healthy in this challenging environment. And then it even got me thinking more on the weekend when in Nova Scotia we had such a horrific incident, which certainly nobody in our part of Canada ever thinks that these things happen close to home, but unfortunately it did. And we've had so many stories come out about the people involved. And I must say that for me, as a person living here, that I received so many notes over the last few days from people across Canada who I work with, or even people I might have sent a message about today's recipe for success saying, thanks, I'm going to tune in, and also just want to let you know we're thinking of you in Nova Scotia. And so it certainly is appreciated, but it does definitely force you to really pause and think first how thankful we are, but also just the fact that we just have to be respectful of that. There's a lot of things going on right now, and we have to sort of take our proper place. So what I've really thought about doing is that what we want to talk about is really food solutions. And when I thought about what my business and it's not about me, but what SKUFood is all about is really trying to help people and find solutions. And I think that's where we need to focus our conversation now, about finding solutions and celebrating as well. And I'm going to share some good news stories with you at the end of today's session, because I think it's just so important that we also have to have good news going on right now, and we have to face reality of events that are happening in society, but we also should celebrate the people who are doing great things, because there are so many people doing great things too. So we're going to celebrate some of those as well, but it's really about solutions. And that's where I want to focus today, because we do have a new environment. There's no doubt that, this new world that you're all trying to work within in the food industry, it is a new world. I mean, we have a very different shopping environment. When you go into our stores now, well, first of all, you might have to wait in line. Second of all, you're shopping in an environment that's very different. Our grocery stores, we used to, and if I think back to my days on the retail side, we tried to create an environment where people wanted to go there, where there were, deals, where there was sort of a treasure hunt for food and give you ideas for cooking and celebrating food and a whole bunch of things like that. Whereas now it's very different now. And we don't know how long it's going to stay the way it is, but from what the experts are telling us, we're going to be working in this new environment for some time to come. So we have to figure out how to work with it and get back to focusing on those solutions and helping our customers and consumers really through a very challenging time. So what I was going to do today, the first thing I want to do though was to share a little bit of insights to you, and I think that's one of our jobs at SKUFood, is to try to bring some things going on in the industry to you and just share some insights. And yesterday, Canadian Grocer sponsored a great webinar where they had Deanne Brisebois, who is the president and CEO of the Retail Council of Canada. They had Michael Graydon, who's this CEO of the Food and Consumer Products of Canada, which would be the association where all the large consumer packaged goods companies are members, and then also Tom Shurry, who is the president and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers. So that would be a lot of the smaller retailers. And it was a very interesting discussion. I just want to share a few insights with you, which I think are pertinent as we keep going in the food industry. And one of the points that Tom Shurry made, which I know that many of us saw this, but here's just some real numbers for you. So their members told them that they were going into March expecting a 2% comp store sales increase, that's probably, what the average would be in our marketplace. And then what they experienced was in the last 3 weeks of March was plus 30, plus 50, and then plus 17. So you can imagine the strain on the whole system, the whole network. And I'm sure those of you who are producers and processors, you experienced it with purchase orders and just your customers looking for product. So you can just see the magnitude of the numbers when you're planning for +2 and you end up dealing with what they got. It really is a challenge it stresses our whole value chain. And Michael Green from FCPC, one of the points which I took away from his part of the conversation was that his members, they experienced similar increases, obviously variable depending on category and department and that kind of thing. But what they're planning for going into April, and I think this is something that we should all be aware of, is they're planning for a 20 to 40% increase. And that depended on the company or the category. But that's a big number that they're looking at. And we all know about this big shift from food service to retail and just all the changes going on in the market with people at home more and that kind of thing. So definitely I thought that was an interesting takeaway, 20 to 40% increase. So if you're trying to look at sales forecast, that's a number to think about. And finally, from Deanne Brisebois, where she talked more about the shopping environment because her members would be the large retailers. What she told us was that prior to the stay-at-home orders and all of the emergence of COVID-19, that consumers in Canada told them that they shopped more than once. 47% of consumers shop more than once per week. And since the whole change in the marketplace, that number's down to 11. So, and they're telling us to stay at home. So that's what we would expect. But you can see this massive shift in just how many people are really in these stores. And also that online shopping up 700%. So that means if it was 2% before, 2 times 700, you can imagine what the number is and how on the retail side, they're trying to manage the sheer volume of orders, picking the orders, dealing with customers coming up looking for their product. And if any of you, and I'm sure many of you have gone on and done some of the online shopping, in most places now, it's probably about a week out that you have to do that. So it's a huge amount of planning, very big change for the consumer to shop this way when we're used to just running into the store for what we need. And then finally, the last point I just wanted to share from Deanne's comments was that what they're looking at in markets that have started to ease up a bit on the restrictions. So I believe she referenced South Korea, she referenced Germany, and where restaurants are opening again, but they are also having to adhere to the physical distancing standards. And what they're seeing is that the food service business, even after it opens up, is still only going to recover about 65% of what they had, or in other words, they're down 35% from where they were before. And probably 2 factors. One, the physical distancing I referenced, and then the second thing would be just the fact that people are not going out the way that they did prior to all this. So just some interesting facts that I just try to share with you. It was a very informative session, but just some things I wanted to share. So now let's talk about solutions, and let's talk about how we can look at your products and perhaps help you address some of the things that we used to use as strategies and tactics in our marketing programs, and how we can look at them now in this new environment that we're working in. So the first one is demos. And when I talk to producers and processors and we start talking about a marketing and sales strategy, one of the first things that always comes up is demos. Well, we're going to do demos. And I say, okay, great. A lot of people do demos, and they say, yeah, but it's great because people try our product and they're going to taste the difference, or we can explain to them the difference. And I think that that's a great component of a strategy. It's not the only part of your strategy, but it is a very solid one. So, but one of the things I always would challenge you to think about how many actual consumers you interact when you do demos. So if you do a demo for 2 hours on a Friday from, I don't know, from 6 till 8 or something like that, you only really touch a fraction of consumers who go through the store in the whole week. So it's a great component of a strategy, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do demos in the future when we're allowed to do them again, but you have to remember that it's not the only part of a strategy. But in today's world, or in the world prior to COVID-19, demos were an important tactic. So let's talk about why. And for me to try to find a solution to something that can't be done anymore or that's changed, I like to go back to why did we do them? What was the purpose of doing them? And then we'll also talk about what the impact of the new environment is on it, and then I'll give you some solutions. So why did we do demos? The first thing was obviously trial. The consumer got to taste your product before they bought it, which, you know, for a lot of people, that's a great thing. It reduced risk for the consumer, because if they tried it and they like it, they go, okay, that's worth the $5 or $8 that I'm going to spend on it. Or some people might try it and say, that one's not for me. But it reduced the risk for the consumer, which is definitely a valuable part of a strategy. Third reason we do demos is exposure. You know, the consumer brings their cart, they come around the end of the aisle, oh, there's a demo for product ABC, and they go, oh, you know, we'll talk about it and learn a little bit about the product. So a chance for exposure. And the final reason that you should be doing demos, and I'm not sure everybody does this, and if you don't or you didn't, when we can get back to doing demos, here's a little tip for you. Use it as an opportunity for feedback. You're going to hear from consumers exactly what they think about your products. And if you're not trying to record that or capture that in some way, then you're missing a big opportunity. Because, and it's not just they like it or maybe they didn't like it. It's also just, what do you think got them to buy? You know, what was it? Was it actually tasting it? Because if so, then yes, you should continue to invest in demos. But maybe it was another one of the attributes of your product. So try to capture the feedback when you're doing demos. But that was a valuable component of that strategy, or that part of your strategy. So if we think about our new environment, what is the impact of this new environment on demos? Well, first thing is there's no more demos. The retailers have said no more because of physical distancing, and obviously there's so many issues around demos related to the transfer of the virus that it's just not going to be part of the solution right now. Another thing that's happening right now, if we think about consumers, they're making shopping lists now. I referenced earlier that if they're shopping online, they're really having to plan almost 2 weeks out, because if I'm going to put in an online order today, it's not going to get delivered till next Wednesday, and I have to plan my meals for the following week. So that's a big change for people, but they are making lists. So if you can get on that list, then good chance they're going to buy your product. So also social media. We know that people are on social media much more. There are a number of people are home now with many industries shut down. So you know that they are on social media much more. And I know some of the people that I am fortunate to do work with have posted job ads, things like that. And the amount of people who are seeing these posts are exponentially more than what they would have been prior to COVID-19. So we know they're on social media. And another thing that we know, they're doing a lot more baking and cooking. You just have to go down the baking aisle in a grocery store right now, and there's no flour, there's no yeast. So we know that they're at home doing more baking and cooking. And, you know, if I think back to prior to all the changes in the market, I know there were a lot of people who used to say to me, Peter, if we could only get them cooking at home. Well, they are now. So now we got to figure out how to communicate to them so that we can get our products into their shopping cart, whether it's a virtual one or a real one. So let's talk about some solutions. So let me just share what I see that you need to be doing and how you can try to tackle this we can't do demos problem. So the first thing you need to think about and consider is who could be an influencer to the purchase of your product. So who's got a voice that could say, wow, this is a great product. I'm trying it right now, and I really love it. So we can't get them to taste it in the store, but think if you took it to, say, a local radio station that broadcasts to the consumers in your target market, and if you maybe shared a little bit about your story, because we have to, it's not just about here, eat this, talk about it on the air. It's about, here's our story, here's how we're still producing food for people, here's some of our employees who are, you know, really should be celebrated for coming to work and doing what they do through this challenge. And perhaps you've done a different take on your product. I know I was talking to Shivani from Shivani's Kitchen in Halifax, and they do Indian spices, and they put together an actual pack where they sell some sauces, they sell spices, and they put this pack together. So that's something you could get them talking about. You could say, this is what we've done to try to respond to these challenges we face. And then all of a sudden, it's more than just a trial. It becomes a little bit of a news story, or it becomes a feel-good story. And you know, I think right now a lot of people could use some of that. So try to do some of those things, and those people get to thousands of people, way more than you could have ever touched with that demo that you might have been doing at the end of aisle 7 on a Friday night. So think about whether you can get a hold of and how you would try to sample your product to an influencer who could really reach a lot of people. Another thing you should consider would be something like breakfast television. So this is breakfast television in Toronto, but they have it in different markets regionally. And again, they're always looking for some information. So if you can provide some great information about food or your quality products or cooking, some of those kind of things, then you can be a resource for them. And there's lots of examples where people with food businesses have been on breakfast television. But now it's so much more important, because then it becomes a demo, that TV host really becomes the sampler. And you try to do some things, and obviously you have to share information, and it's not just a commercial, but you have to, if you can get on there, then you can have them do, it's like they're doing a demo for tens, hundreds of thousands of people, depending on their reach. So consider that one. Another type of influencer that you could look at would be people who do blogs and people who do video logs. So there are a lot of these people out there right now, and if you find the right influencer in your target market, so there's lots of examples out there where there are people who really appeal to mothers with young kids at home. So if your product fits into that and that's your target market, then you need to find those people, get your products to them, and then have them sample it and share it. And all these influencers can reach so many people, and it's very powerful now, especially when more people are home. But when one of the things which I would encourage you when you're trying to have these influencers talk about your products, when they're talking about it, you need to suggest that they get people to put it on their grocery list. And that's so important in today's environment, because people are making lists before they go to the store. So if you do get to do a breakfast television spot or something like that, or if you do a little write-up for the person in the radio station, make sure you add that part. Like, just say, you know, we want to suggest to people, put it on your list because we know you're making a grocery list ahead of time. And that will jog their memory to do that, because in today's environment, if you're not on the list, you have a much lower chance of getting purchased. And another thing that I think you can do is, we've lost the ability to go to restaurants, and food service is such an incredible part of the food industry. You know, for myself, I mean, we'd love to eat out at great restaurants, and it's also an integral part of the food industry, because we would see trends come through food service first. We would see chefs using products in innovative ways that would open up whole new markets sometimes. So it's sad to see that it really has been hurt so badly during this change. And one thing that you could probably try to do, though, is start to help people how to use your product, where to use it in a meal. Give them a whole meal, maybe not just your product on a grocery list, but give them a whole meal and say, this is how it all fits together. So you help them, and you're providing more of a solution. And if you have a means to get to people, if you have the budget where you can do some things, I'd even consider printing up grocery lists and saying, you know, here's produce and meat and bakery. And if your item happens to be in that department, you put your item there in a little checkbox beside it to remind them and help them make a grocery list. And if you can find where your target market is and really be specific about it, these are some of the kind of things that you can do to try to replace demos. And we can't make them happen, but what we can try to do is address some of those issues. And by doing some of the things that I've shared with you, you really can get people to try your product without trying it. And the last solution that I wanted to share is when we have a demo, like I said, it removes the risk. People try it and they're like, I love it, I'm going to buy it. So there's no risk to them. Now there is a risk to put your product on their shopping list because they may not have tried it. So if you offer a guarantee, and I mean, trust me, guarantees are not new. And to be transparent here, if you had told me guarantee was going to be an integral part of your strategy 6 months ago, I would have said, everybody does that, or everybody, assumes they can get their money back. But now that it's different. So if you put guarantee and, if you don't like it, we'll take care of you, then it removes that risk for the consumer. And we know not that many people are going to probably take advantage of it. But if you make it clear to them that you're removing the risk for them, then you're much more likely to get that product into the shopping cart. So think about that. And actually this one here, I found this website, and I don't know if they have this on their website all the time or if they've changed it given the current environment. But I thought it was interesting that when you went to Topher's Beard and Soap Company, which I haven't bought anything there, but when I found it, the first thing that hits you is that we guarantee it. So, it removes the risk in making the purchase. So those are some ideas that you can use to try to alleviate some of the stress of not having demos. And yes, it's work. I appreciate that all these things are work. But if you think about the time, if you used to do demos yourself, or if you were investing in an outside resource to do demos for you, it could be thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. So how can you redeploy those resources to do some of these new strategies to keep your product in the mind of the consumer and also moving it off the shelf and into the shopping cart? So let's talk about ads now. And we know that ads were obviously a very important part of the grocery business before all of this happened. I can tell you that depending on the retailer, but probably ads represented 20 to 25% of their sales every week were items that were in the ad. And it's become very difficult for retailers to plan ads because supply is inconsistent and they have to work so many weeks out to accomplish the ad process. And it's been very challenging for them. So I'm sure you've noticed that the ads have changed. The inside is simpler. It's easier for them to pull an item out, put another item in. There's less sort of complicated themes and recipes and things like that because they're trying to simplify the process for their business, because their business has changed a lot too. And some retailers have really scaled back their ads. Walmart came out and said, we're not going to do ads. And then they did start to do kind of a front page again. The other retailers, we've seen varying sort of levels of execution on the ads. But the reality is the ad, as it was before, is not what it is today and will be in the future. So we need to figure out how to deal with that. So we go back to my process again and say, why did we do ads? Well, first thing, we did ads because it drove merchandising at store level. If you were anywhere in the ad, whether it was the front page, the inside, the back page, your customers would bring in a whole bunch of product, build displays, and that really did influence consumers to buy your products. You tried to convey some value. So 52 weeks, you might not be a lot, afford to be $2.99, but for those ad weeks, you could be $2.49 or 2 for $5 or $2.77 in store, or something like that, where you convey a little bit of extra value to the consumer. We also know that even before all of this happened, that consumers made shopping lists from the weekly ad. They would look at the ad, put it down on their table, or look at it on their screen and say, okay, this item's on sale, I'm going to buy it. This item's on sale, I'm going to buy it. So we know that it influenced people's shopping lists. We also did ads for awareness, exposure. Perhaps you were launching a new item or a line extension or something like that. So that was a reason to invest in the ad. And the other great thing about an ad, which we always have to remember, is that ads drive signage. When you did an ad with a retailer, they put up a sign, and signage sells. So those are some of the reasons we did ads. So what about the impact in this new environment we're in? So first of all, the items in the ad, there are far lesser of them. So if in the past you might have got in an ad once a quarter, that's probably going to be reduced to every 6 months now, or something like that. The frequency of your item being in there will be reduced. we know that in this current environment, inventory is probably the #1 priority for retailers, is being able to get the inventory they want, when they want it, where they want it. So that is a challenge with ads because the volume is less predictable. So inventory is a big challenge. We know merchandising at store level is not what it was. So in the past, we used to plan the whole store based around the ad program and events that were going on. Well, a lot of that is not happening now. The stores are stretched for employees. A lot of them are now picking online shopping orders if that retailer offers that service. A lot of things are different at retail. So the merchandising that would have been tied to the ad program now is not nearly the same as it was. There are things happening, but not the same. Now on the flip side, we know people are making a list way more than they used to. So that for me says if you can get on that grocery list, you have a great chance of being purchased. We know the retailers are trying to be more aggressive. If you're on any of the email lists for your customers, and I would encourage you to be on all of them so you know what they're communicating to consumers, they are being more aggressive about pushing, here's our flyer program this week, here's what we have for special items and that kind of thing, because they still want to communicate with consumers and convey value and sort of reinforce their position in the marketplace. So we know they're being more aggressive about that. And then also we know, as I pointed out at the top of the session, that there's far fewer people going to the stores. The trips are way down across the country, and that people are home a lot more of the time. And some people working from home, some people not working at all. So we know that all those factors are happening in the marketplace. So now let's talk about some solutions to the ads and how you can play a role. So as I mentioned, ads are not gone. So if you know you have inventory and you can be sure that you're going to be able to satisfy the purchase orders when your customers need them, then I would encourage you to be talking to them about that. That is an opportunity for your business. And perhaps you didn't always warrant space in the ad before, but because they're looking for things now where they know they're going to get inventory, where they know it's not going to be a problem, then you may actually be much more likely to be in the ad than you were if you have inventory. So that's the most important factor. Make sure you've got product. And once you have that, then you can have some of the conversations. Another opportunity for you is loyalty programs. And in the past, you may have said, well, I'm going to invest my resources into the ads, which is fine. It's a credible part of a strategy. But now you may have to shift some of those dollars to loyalty programs. And you can see this is Metro's version. And most of the retailers have a program. At Walmart, it's more rollbacks as opposed to a loyalty card. That's their in-store program. Other retailers have in-stores and loyalty programs. So these things get you a sign. And that's what's important, because now in this new world, you may not have the ad space that you used to have. So you may have to look at loyalty. And we know that the retailers also are aggressive at trying to share those loyalty offerings to their customers. So you know that may get something for you. Another opportunity, which I always talk about and not many people execute, but I really think communicating with your customers differently is an opportunity right now. So you can't be in the ad, you can't get that big end cap display. So why not communicate with the people at the stores? And this is the Hand Pie Company, which is a great product from Prince Edward Island. And Sarah took the initiative and just hand wrote a message in the box and said, hey, thanks for putting our hand pies out on the shelf. And you can see that her customers responded on social media and put a big post about her products and said, hey, we love, it's Hand Pie Day, and they posted the photo of the message. So communicate with the people in the stores. They have probably more flexibility right now than they had in the past. And it doesn't mean please build a display. That's not the point of it. It's just to communicate. You might want to say, hey, thanks for going to work. We realize that you people out there are putting in a lot of hours and you're dealing with a lot of different consumers in today's world. So just put a little message in there and say, hey, thanks. And you never know what will happen. Somebody might go, you know what? I laughed when I got that. Let's put that up on an end cap and we'll see what we can do with it. So communicate differently. Get creative about your communication and just say thanks sometimes. Another thing you can do to supplement the ad program is mass advertising. So I'm not sure that we have anybody that's big enough to have an ad in Times Square in New York City, not as big as Coca-Cola, but the point is that they pulled back. And if you look, you can find things about, how Coca-Cola has changed, being, one of the biggest marketing engines in the world. They've changed their strategy in the last 6 weeks, and they've changed where they were investing dollars, and they've put some of these things into mass advertising. And I mean, this is a social awareness message, but let's not kid yourself. Coca-Cola is still front and center, and it's in there twice. So it's a message that needs to be communicated in New York right now, but it's also Coca-Cola. So advertising on the platform and in the environment where you can make it part of your marketing mix can be very valuable right now, because consumers are seeing things differently, and those messages about either celebrating your people or celebrating your products or solutions about how to use your products, all those things are opportunities which, if you can't put your money into the ads, that you could put some resources into. And the thing about solutions, and I think in the past, if we were promoting products in an ad, it was much more about item and price. Sometimes it was a theme, or sometimes we would have a recipe or complementary products or some of those kind of things, but it was much more about item and price. So shift your thought process and provide people with solutions. So if your product is something that can be used in cooking, and we know because schools from coast to coast are closed, kids are home, and if it's something that can be used in a recipe that a parent can make with a child or something like that, help them, tell them how to do it. And I know in our house, there's been more cookies made in the last 6 weeks than there were in the previous 6 months. So you can try to help people with those things. And it's not about, hey, so-and-so want to buy my cookie or want to buy my ingredient for a cookie. It's about, here's a recipe, here's how you do it, and by the way, here are the items you'll need, and you should put it on your shopping list, because if you don't, and you're only going to the store once a week, you're going to have to wait another week to be able to make the cookies. So try to find creative ways to give people solutions to selling their products. So the third thing we're going to talk about is impulse buying. And for some people, this was a huge part of their strategy. If you had a great looking package or a super fresh product or whatever it was, impulse was important. And I selected this photo. This was in a urban fare store in Vancouver, and you can see mangoes flown in from Australia for $7.99. So I'm not sure whether that works in today's marketplace. So, but that was an impulse buy. I'm sure even in sort of a urban core market in Vancouver, not a lot of people had an $8 mango on their list, but it was an impulse buy because they saw it and they went, wow, they're beautiful. I want to take it home. I want to try it. But that option is not there anymore, because the shopping environment is so different. People, they're shopping from a list. They get their head down. It's a very different environment there. So if we think back to our process and say, okay, impulse buying is important. Here's how it impacted our business. It delivered incremental sales, and impulse buying does deliver incremental sales. When you have a great looking product, great package, great marketing piece, something that catches people's attention in the store, they pick it up and put it in their shopping cart. And packaging could influence people. We know for niche items that sometimes if you could get the store to merchandise your, say you had a special rub for barbecue or something like that, that if they put it in the meat department, then people would go, oh, look at that, I'm gonna pick that up and buy that with my steak or something like that. So it really was something that niche items depend on. Merchandising, I mean, if you could work out an arrangement with your customers where they were going to merchandise your product either on an end cap or with a complimentary item, or perhaps the age-old example which we can use, but you understand the concept is sort of French fries and ketchup. So if the French fries are in the ad for 99 cents, you merchandise the ketchup beside them and people pick up both. So a lot of times merchandising would impact and drive those impulse buys. And quality had a huge factor on impulse buying. If people walked up and saw a beautiful whatever, and obviously this is more on the fresh side of the store, but a beautiful whatever, then they would pick it up and put it in their shopping cart. So your quality and what you delivered to the store could really have an influence on the sales of your products. So let's talk about impulse buying in this new environment we're operating in. So I've talked about the shopping environment a few times, and it is different. It's somber. People are going around, they have their head down. They don't want to have that sort of contact with other people. We don't even know how to react because we see people we know in the store that are our friends, and usually you go over and shake their hands or whatever. Now you're like, whoa, I got to stand back. So it's a very different shopping environment and does not lead to impulse buying. The whole physical distancing. So if you're in, say, the produce department and somebody's standing in front of the strawberries or the blueberries, you don't go by there. You go around the other way. And so if you might go back, you might not. So you lost the chance for that impulse buy if those were your strawberries or your blueberries, because the person just doesn't go back right now. We know that online is over 10% now. So on impulse buys don't happen online because people are making that list, as I said, 7 days out. So it's not, you don't have that opportunity to grab their attention in the store. People are shopping from lists. They're making out their meals. They're making out what they want to cook. If they're doing those chocolate chip cookies I talked about earlier, they've got the ingredients for that on their list. So it's really important to figure out how to be on the list. And the last thing is consumer confidence. And we know that impulse buys were generated because people would be in the store and go, oh, look at that, it looks beautiful, I'm going to take that. I had no intention of buying that, but it looks so good, I'm going to put it in my cart. So if you're concerned about money, or you've worked, you or your spouse or somebody in your house has lost a job, we know people aren't going to buy those impulse items that they used to go, oh, isn't that beautiful, I'm going to pick it up and put it in my cart. So we have to just respect that and understand that that is part of this new environment. So as far as some solutions for you, I think we have to look for creative ways to get the word out about our products so that we do get on those grocery lists. And one of the things which I want to share, Alain Bousset, who's the Kilted Chef, has put together his whole virtual cooking class schedule. So since he's been in isolation or staying in his house, he can't go out and do the work that he used to do, where he would help people trial their products at events and travel all over and do culinary demonstrations and teach people. So all that is gone. So he and Joanne looked at it and said, what am I going to do? What are we going to do? And so every day on Facebook Live, they do a session. They've had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views. So think about it. If you find an avenue where your product could be a part of something like that. So no, you're not going to get the impulse buy from the store, but if you have somebody like that talking about it and maybe giving somebody a way to use it, all of a sudden you take the impulse away from the store, which might not be reality today, and put it somewhere else where they're sitting and they're looking at Facebook and they go, oh, I got to put that on my list because that looks so good. I got to try that out. So you change the point of where the impulse happens. And that's the environment that we're in right now. So remember when you went to all those conferences and people who spoke about marketing and strategy and all that, they said, you got to build a list. You got to have an email list so that you can communicate with consumers. Did you do it? Well, now's the time where that list is so valuable because you could be communicating directly with your community. So if you did it, congratulations. If you didn't do it, or maybe you're like me and you're doing it, then you got to get on it. It's a very important part of your strategy right now. And if any of you send me emails and you're not on our SKUFood list, right now I politely try to answer your question, help you out, do whatever I can. And at the end, you'll see a note from me that says, by the way, if you'd like to be on our SKUFood list, we'd love to add you, where we share insights and some different things going on in the food industry. Because for me, that's how I can communicate with people. I used to have the privilege of speaking at events all across the country where I would meet new people and say, hey, you know, if you want to learn about SKUFood, give me your card and I'll put you on the list. Well, that's gone now. So I've tried to really change my focus, and we have to build our list the same as you have to. But if you have a list, communicate with people. And now again, it's a new impulse. They see an email from you with a recipe or with an idea or something about your product, whatever it is, and they go, oh, I got to put that on my grocery list. It's a new form of impulse shopping. What's happened with your website? So this is one thing we did do at SKUFood, and I'm not trying to make this an ad, I'm just using us as an example, but we did change the homepage of our website to reflect what's going on in the industry. So did you do that? Or do I go to your website and find what I've always found? Because there's so many more people on the internet right now. So if people go to your website, then you need to address the environment they're in. Provide a solution for them in today's environment. Download a recipe. I don't know. There's all kinds of things you can do, but please change your website to reflect what's going on. Maybe you talk about the guarantee. I don't know, but you really want to reflect today's world, not yesterday's world. And social media, huge opportunity. There's so many different things you can do. Geo-targeting, you can repurpose some of your dollars into promoting your products, whether it's on Facebook, if that's where your target consumers are, or Instagram, or there are all kinds of them. Some of them I don't even know. I see my kids making videos on TikTok. I think maybe I should put something about SKUFood in TikTok, but maybe I'd only get there with the under 15 crowd. I don't know, but you have to keep learning about it, as I have to keep learning about it, but it's something that you need to be aware of, because again, it's the new impulse. People are spending much more time here, so this is when you can get them to go, oh, look at that. And you know, it actually might be more effective than trying to get their attention on 35,000 items in the grocery store. But that's what we were used to, so that's what we relied on. Unfortunately, it's changed, so now we've got to find new solutions for it. And as I've been going through all the different things, I did go back, and those of you who I know you've seen our cart process before at SKUFood, but the reason I put it up there is I want you to really think when you're looking at your products, okay, who's my consumer? How do I get alignment with that customer that where I'm trying to sell my product? What's the retail plan? And that retail plan really probably has had to change in the last 6 weeks. And then how do I develop trust with customers and consumers? So it's still, the process works. You might have to go back and really think it through in this new environment. So that's why I share it with you. If you want a copy, let me know. I'd be happy to send it to you. And one last thing, when I was thinking about different items and things, is you really do have to challenge yourself in this environment. Is my item right? And if you go through all the different sort of strategies and opportunities you have to sell your product, if it doesn't really fit in today's environment, you have to accept that. And so perhaps, like I said, when I was talking about impulse buying, maybe an $8 mango doesn't work right now. And we have to accept that. There are going to be some items that don't work in today's environment. Maybe they'll come back when hopefully the world returns to what we enjoyed before, but you have to be realistic about what will sell and what will not sell. And I should have said off the top, but I'd be happy to take any questions as well. So if you have questions, you can put them into the chat, and I'd be happy to answer those for you. But what we've been trying to do is just share some of those insights with you. We're going to do another recipe for success next week, which we're going to focus on building relationships in this new environment with the category managers, with your customers. So hopefully you'll be able to join us again next week. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you. I think it's so important, because every product's unique, and everything that different producers and processors need is unique. And I promised I was going to share some good news, and I just want to share a few stories with you. So the first one at the top, and apparently this is an idea that originated in Prince Edward Island between ADL and one of the potato producers in Prince Edward Island, and then Melvin Rideout from Rideout's Farm in Newfoundland. They grow potatoes and some other vegetables in Newfoundland, and they did it with Central Dairies. So in Deer Lake, they set up a station in a community, a place where people could access, and they just drove through and opened up their trunk, and the people from Rideout's Farm and Central Dairies got together, and they just provided people with some potatoes and some milk to help them out in this challenging time. So great idea, and I guess it was a great thing all the way around. So congratulations to everybody involved in that one. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can see there's a group from Nova Agri down in the Annapolis Valley, and they assembled, this is the second week they've done this. There's a truck stop, a Petrocan truck stop in Nova Scotia, actually close to Truro, where they've been providing free meals to truck drivers, and recognizing how important truck drivers are in this whole economy, and keeping them going, because it was hard. It's been hard for truck drivers. Many of you probably know that. They're not been as welcome, because people say, well, where have you been, and all kinds of things. So they were providing free meals to the truck drivers. So the group at Nova Agri got together with some of the other producers in the Annapolis Valley. Midland shipped the product for free. So that's 2 full pallets of product they sent up there. So congratulations to the team there. And it actually came from people in the warehouse talking to one of the truck drivers about it. It wasn't somebody in a boardroom figured that one out. It was people in the warehouse. And we know food service is down. We know that French fries are not going to be needed the way they were. So Maclean Foods has donated 20 million pounds of potatoes to food banks across Canada. So huge amount of potatoes to help people who have some real needs. And in Winnipeg, from Piccola Cucina, which is a company who makes some really awesome cookies. They're limonetti, they're called, and it's an Italian style. They're really a great tasting cookie. And so what Pina has done there is, for everybody who buys a case on her website, she donates a case to frontline healthcare workers. So you can see here's a couple of people smiling because they got some free cookies, because we know those people are working hard and putting in a lot of hours. And I already mentioned the program that Alain Boussin, the Kilted Chef, has been doing, but the reason I wanted to celebrate it here is that you wouldn't believe the numbers that he's getting on those Facebook Live sessions in the afternoon. So he's doing different recipe every day and doing it right in his kitchen. He does it on his phone. It's not high tech, but it's very effective. And people love the fact that he's sharing the recipes, and he and his wife Joanne are both there. There's always a little bit of banter back and forth between them. It's entertaining. But the point is that he's been able to take something where he couldn't go out and do his work, but now he's able to share it on Facebook Live. So it's great, and great to see people trying all these different things, and congratulations to all of them, because I think that this is the attitude we have to have in this new environment. So I see there's a comment here, so I'm just going to check it out, and bear with me. Oh, I see Susan has put the link in for next week, so we'd love to have you join. So you can see the link is there in the chat, so thank you for doing that, Susan. So here's a question, which I'll read it. It says, in the changing environment, how would you recommend reaching out to grocery managers? We initially switched to email and video message, as I was under the impression they were overwhelmed with shortages and new social distancing measures, and we just started calling them again. In your view, have things settled enough to have the conversations we had in the past, or are they still overwhelmed with the situation? I'm treading lightly, and I think they will respect you for treading lightly, and so I thank you for that. If I go back to my retail days. So what I would tell you is, I believe we've passed the biggest part of the upheaval. I hope we have. So the panic buying for March is not happening anymore. The stores have implemented most of the social distancing, or well, they've implemented them all. I mean, if you go to the store, you know that. And the traffic in the store is almost regulated now, where they're only letting so many people in. So I think that, and the other point I was going to make is we got past Easter, and Easter was a big sort of unknown for everybody in the food business, because we didn't know how much are people going to buy, how different is it going to be, and that kind of thing. So anyway, so that's past now. So I believe now that you can reach out again to the people who work with your products every day. And if you do DSD delivery, then you need to be able to go in and replenish, because they want your products, they want the stock. So you should be able to communicate with them. But what I would do is sort of preference it with, is now a good time to talk? And they have a lot different priorities than they did 6 weeks ago. But there's also some things have changed in that probably their supervisors are around a little less than they used to be, because the retailers have pulled a lot of people off the road. As I mentioned, the consumers in the store at one time are fewer than they used to be. The baskets are much bigger, but there's fewer people in the store. So it's less time working and interacting with consumers than maybe they had in the past. They have cut back on a lot of the incremental merchandising service departments. Like if you go and look in the deli, the case is not full of product anymore or anything like that. So there's a few less complications, we'll call it, for them. So I think you preference your conversation with, is it a good time to talk? And if not, can I schedule a time to get back, and we can have a conversation and figure out what we need to figure out. Or if it is a good time to talk, then I'm sure they'll probably want to get things going again. And the other thing I would recommend when you are talking to people on the retail side is let them know what you're doing in your business about all these challenges. And that's one of the things sometimes we see what's in front of us, which is natural. We see the challenges that we have, and we know the retailers have had to overcome a lot. but they don't probably know what you've had to overcome. So it's not that you're complaining or that you're looking for sympathy. It's really just that they understand, oh wow, you know what, there've been a lot of changes on that side too, and we respect that, and we work together, and there is a lot more collaboration. So that's how I would approach it. But I think that we are getting to where all of us are accepting that this is, we'll call it the new normal, and we have to work within that environment. So I think you can. Now, don't everybody reach out at once, but I think you can start to try to get back to that flow of communication the way you did. And then I see a comment here in the chat about access is different by department. And I would agree with that. It really depends on the level of complexity of the department, the level of sort of spikes in demand. I know I was on a call, I got invited to a call with Loblaw the other day about something, and it had nothing to do with this, but they said, we got a lot of paper in the warehouse. So I guess that, you know, they've addressed those spikes, and it's some of the inventory things are starting to level out for them. And Jeff says seafood hasn't been hit as hard, so we've maintained good access to seafood managers. So that's encouraging. And I think if you have, then you want to help these people. I mean, it's, you know, you have a relationship. So, but you do have to be respectful of their demands in store. And sometimes people in store are being pulled to different places to help and fill in and that kind of thing. So I think that it's a great point. You just kind of got to check it out, but we should be to the point now where we're able to get back to communicating. So I'll just wait a sec to see if there's any more questions or anything, and certainly always happy to answer your questions. You can also send me an email, peter@skufood.com, or be happy to talk to you on the phone. My number is 902-489-2900, and be happy to have a conversation with you about any of these things, whether it's finding some solutions in this new environment, or next week when we start talking about relationships. And I think maybe what I'll do is include a part about the stores, because I got a couple of comments here about it, and actually somebody emailed me a very similar question earlier today too. So I think that's something that's on people's mind. And if you see things that are on your mind that you want me to address in these sessions, you know, I'm always open to ideas. And if you have opportunities that you're struggling with, how do I do it, then let me know, because this is our way to try to give back and help you with some of the challenges. So thank you for being here today with our recipe for success. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.